Hi there. Today I'm going to be showing you the wraparound table that we designed for Sorby ProEdge. It's similar in some ways to the table which comes with the ProEdge as standard. It uses the same mounting points, but this actually pivots in the other direction, which is very useful for the knives and the bowl hooks that this is designed for. We've actually been using this table in conjunction with the small knife jig to make blades which we're now selling on the Hewn Hone website. And we've practiced with this for quite a time. We've sent it out for a few different people to test. And we're now producing professional quality blades with this setup. And it's been tested long enough, and it's time to share the whole package with you. The first thing I should say is that when you purchase this table, it won't come assembled, but it's very simple. Just 2 socket head screws which attach the main table to the bracket. It'll only go together in one way. The Sorby table, as I said, attaches in the same way, and it won't quite fit because we've put a raised platen on, which is very useful for doing knives. But just to give you an overview, it fits in this way, and it will fit from 90 degrees and then tilt down, which is great for doing a chisel or a gouge, but not so good for knives. Okay, so I've got this attached. It uses exactly the same screws as is used to attach the standard table. This is a big example, but this shows how our jig works and the holes you use to get the different angles that you need. It will start off from 90 degrees to the platen, and then it will tilt upwards, largely in 2.5 degree increments, which is very useful for doing knives, because you have to remember that when you do a knife, it's the 2 angles which count for the final bevel angle. So 2.5 degrees still actually gives a 5 degree difference in bevel angle. So a 10 degree bevel on one side or on both sides will give you 20 degree final angle. 12.5 degrees will give you 25 degrees. If you want to go further, if you're very particular about the angle you want, it is perfectly possible to set it to any angle, but it's not so repeatable. Whereas this, if you use the system which we've got, it's just a question of getting getting this screw to engage one of the holes. But if you do the screw up and it's not in the whole thing will lock at any angle. But as I say, it's not as repeatable. It's probably better, until you know what you're doing, to stick with the different angles that we have. And say it'll go up to 30 degrees, which would be very, very steep for a knife, because 30 degrees each side is 60 degrees. But for doing something like a bowl hook, which is single bevel, then 30 degrees is quite a reasonable angle to go for. One thing to be aware of is that this system uses a platen which pushes the belt forward slightly. There's we sell this version, and there is also a Robert Sorby knife platen which works just as well. And the reason this is important is that when you're trying to grind the blade, if the belt is too far back, it's very difficult to not hit the tang of the blade on the sides of the machine. So pushing the belt forward gives you a little bit more clearance. One thing though is that, this is true of any platen, is there's a little bit of play, a little bit of leeway in the holes, and if you want to jig everything up very accurately, it is worth bearing this in mind. And so what I'd recommend is that when you first put the table on, is to put it at 0 degrees, and when I say 0 degrees, it means it will grind a bevel of 0 degrees on a knife. But that's actually 90 degrees for the platen. So 0 degrees is this hole here. And there's a few different, it could be 0, 10, 20 or 30, but it's pretty obvious if it looks like it's 90, that's the one. So put that on, and then check with something square, one of our small knife jigs will do, and check that it's actually the table is actually at 90 degrees to the platen. If it's not, it's easier to take the side off, but you can actually adjust it and push this in and line everything up. But once you've got that to 90 or 0, depending on how you look at it, everything else should follow on quite accurately. It may not need doing at all, and it may not matter, but there's tolerances in the the part we make and the tolerances and the part of the robot saw we make, and if you get a bad match you may need a little bit of jigging about to get this to line up. Once it does though, everything else should track quite easily. This video is really just on the table, but I will touch on the jigs that we will use it on, but they will actually have their own video or videos because this table hasn't been designed just with one jig in mind. So you can see that it's a lot longer than it needs to be for the small knife jig, but for the bowl hook jig, which I'll show you shortly, it needs to be this length. So this is the one I've got most experience with. It has been designed for grinding small blades. So I'll just set the table to 10 degrees, which is the first hole. So if you put a blade in at this point, it would grind 10 degrees either side, 20 degree included angle. It's got 2 holes in it. They're not the same one, and they will fit a 1/4 inch diameter rod, and we'll be sealing a series of blanks. I'm not going to go into it too much, but there's different angles you can set it up with. The main thing is it wants to be pretty much straight here. If it isn't, there's a few tricks to line stuff up, and it just does that with an Allen key like this. The thing to remember is to make sure you've got enough clearance so you can get round the side of the tables, and I haven't quite got enough clearance there, so we need a little bit more. There. So the idea is that you can grind one bevel with no adjustments. You come round and grind the other. It's got 2 holes to suit different things. Don't be tempted to put 2 in at once. It's just going to end badly. It's never a good idea to try that. But I'll explain in the other video why we got 2 holes with different angles. But it's a great jig. There's a lot more to say on it, but it will allow you to do some quite complicated grinds very accurately, and obviously you can change belts and work down through the grits without altering any of your angles. There will be a selection of different blanks available to buy, all hardened and tempered, ready to go, but there's always the option to make your own out of whatever 1/4 inch tool steel you have available. The second jig I want to show you is the jig for grinding bowl hooks. It's something I don't have a lot of experience in. Adrian Lloyd knows much more about this, but I'll talk you through what I do know. This is a very short blank, but it will give you the idea. The blank goes down the main body of the jig, and then it's tightened up with grub screws, and it wants to be lined up as close as possible to 90 degrees. And what the jig will allow you to do, or the jig of the table allows you to do, first thing is to have it set to 90 degrees, which should be here. And it's very possible to true up the forging. You can grind all the faces to a true 90 degrees very easily, because the big heavy jig will hold everything straight. When you're happy with this shape, you can then grind a bevel angle on. 30 degrees is a nice one to start with, so we'll go for 30, which is exactly, that will be 10. And yeah, that's 30 degrees. And now you're able to grind on the 30-degree angle onto the hook. It would then be bent round with the bevel in place, but there'll be a much more detailed video on this, but that is the jig for bowl hooks. There will be more jigs coming out to work with this table, but these are the 2 we're launching for now. Well, that's pretty much it for the introduction to the table. Just want to show you the sort of quality of work that it's capable of doing. These are all production items that we've made using the ProEdge, using this jig, and it's ever so repeatable, and you can get a really good grind, and you're also fully in control of the process. So it's yes, highly recommended product. We've really enjoyed using it in the workshop, and I hope you do too.